I am Natalie Hughes, 29 years old, a financial consultant from Denver, Colorado. Growing up, my family always told me I was too ambitious, like wanting more for myself was some kind of flaw. The irony is, the very ambition they mocked is what carried me through when they cut me off and left me to fend for myself. Before I share my story, let me know where you are watching from and subscribe if you value standing up for yourself. My childhood looked good on paper. We lived in a nice 2-story home in the suburbs with manicured lawns and neighbors who waved every morning. To outsiders, we seemed like a loving, functional family, but inside those walls, the truth was different. My parents, Margaret and Richard, had always favored my older brother, Harris. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the one who tried too hard and made everything dramatic. When Harris got a C in school, my parents excused it with, "He's just not a test taker." When I got an A, my mother pursed her lips and said, "Why not an A+?" It was always like that. Harris's mistakes were minimized, my achievements brushed aside. I grew up feeling invisible, like no matter what I did, I was just a shadow in his light. Things reached a breaking point when I was 19. I had just been accepted to the University of Chicago on a partial scholarship. It was a big deal. I had worked my tail off through high school while juggling 2 part-time jobs. But instead of celebrating with me, my father asked, "How do you plan on paying for the rest? Don't expect us to cover it." Meanwhile, Harris had already flunked out of college once, and my parents had paid for his tuition, his rent, even his car without a second thought. When I reminded them of that, my mother's eyes went cold. "Don't compare yourself to your brother. He has different needs." That was the night I realized my parents weren't just blind. They had made a choice. They chose him over me, every single time. I packed a bag a week later and left. I told myself I wouldn't beg them for anything again, but leaving didn't mean the pain stopped. Every holiday, every birthday, I sat alone while I saw photos online of my family gathered together, Harris smiling in the center, my parents beaming at him. No seat was left for me. At first, I struggled hard. I took on student loans, worked double shifts at a diner, and slept 3 hours a night to keep my grades afloat. I remember scrubbing plates at 2 a.m., my hands cracked from the hot water, whispering to myself, "One day, they'll regret this." There were nights I wanted to quit, nights when my body felt like it couldn't keep going, but I clung to that whisper. It became my fuel. In my sophomore year, I landed an internship at a small financial firm in Chicago. It didn't pay much, but it opened a door. I learned the ropes of investment strategy, client relations, and risk assessment. My mentor there, a sharp but kind woman named Angela, told me, "Natalie, you've got grit. Don't let anyone take that from you." Her words stuck. For the first time, someone outside of school believed in me. That belief kept me going, even when my family's silence cut deep. Then came the betrayal that truly severed any thread between me and them. It was Thanksgiving break during my junior year. Harris had gotten into trouble, again. A DUI this time. My parents called me, their voices full of false warmth. For a second, I thought maybe they wanted to invite me home. But no, they wanted money. "Harris needs a lawyer," my dad said. "You're good with money now, aren't you? We thought you could pitch in." I remember gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "You cut me off. You told me I was on my own. But now you want me to save him? Don't be selfish, Natalie," my mom snapped. Family helps family. The hypocrisy made me sick. I told them no. My father's voice went cold. "Then don't bother coming back here. You've made your choice." That was the last time I spoke to them for years. Graduating college felt like standing on a mountaintop I had climbed alone. No family in the audience, no flowers or hugs waiting for me, just me in my cap and gown, smiling for photos a kind professor offered to take. I told myself it didn't matter, that I had survived without them, and that was worth more than their hollow approval. But deep down, the loneliness stayed. Every success felt like it echoed in an empty room. Still, I didn't stop. I worked harder than ever, rising through the ranks at the firm. By 27, I had earned my CPA license, and by 28, I was managing million-dollar accounts. I bought my own condo in Denver, paid off my student loans, and even started mentoring other young women the way Angela once mentored me. Yet, even with all of this, my family never reached out. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, not even when I posted online about buying my first home. It was like I didn't exist, until the day I did. It started with an article. A local business magazine featured me on their cover. Natalie, the consultant behind Colorado's fastest-growing startups. They called me a financial prodigy and wrote about how I was helping small businesses thrive. My inbox flooded with new clients, congratulations, and invitations to speak at events. And then, like ghosts emerging from the fog, my family reappeared. A message from my mother first. Saw the article, impressive. We're proud of you, proud. The word hit me like a punch. Where was that pride when I was scraping by? When I was crying myself to sleep in a cramped dorm room? When I begged them to see me? Then came a message from Harrius. Hey sis, long time. I was wondering if we could meet up. I have this business idea, and I think you'd be the perfect person to help me with it. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. For years, I had dreamed of this moment. Not the message, but the chance to finally show them I wasn't the weak one, the extra child. That I was strong, independent, successful. They thought they could cut me off forever. What they didn't realize was that they had lit a fire in me that nothing could put out. And now, years later, when they finally saw what I had become without them, their world was about to freeze. The first 2 years without my family were the hardest years of my life. I had thought leaving home would mean freedom, but I didn't expect freedom to taste so much like hunger and exhaustion. Every morning I would clock in at the diner at 5 a.m. before rushing to class, and at night I would scrub dishes until my fingers cracked. I slept in a cramped dorm room that smelled faintly of mildew, where the radiator clicked so loudly I could hardly sleep. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had made a mistake. Maybe if I had just played along, laughed at Harius's jokes, kept my head down, accepted the unfairness, maybe I wouldn't be alone. But then I remembered the way my father's voice turned to ice when I refused to help Harius out of his DUI mess. Then don't bother coming back here. That sentence replayed in my head like a loop. It was the final nail. At school, I forced myself to smile, to appear like every other student with family support, when the truth was I was barely hanging on. I remember one particular winter break when everyone went home, the campus emptied out, the halls silent. I stayed behind, working double shifts at the diner because I couldn't afford the trip back to Denver. On Christmas Eve, I ate leftover pie from the kitchen staff meal, sitting alone in the diner's back room, while everyone else had family gatherings. I had fluorescent lights and cold linoleum floors, but those quiet, lonely nights built something in me. They hardened me, sharpened me. If my family had hoped that cutting me off would break me, they didn't realize they were shaping a steel they couldn't bend. Angela, my mentor at the firm where I interned, saw something in me. She was the first adult who didn't treat my ambition like a flaw. Natalie, she told me once as we were going over numbers late into the evening, you have a gift. But more than that, you have persistence. That's rarer than talent. Her words stuck with me. Whenever I wanted to quit, I thought of them. Still, the silence from my family haunted me. On my 21st birthday, I got nothing. No card, no call. Not even a cold happy birthday text. Harius's birthdays, on the other hand, were plastered across Facebook, my parents throwing him lavish dinners, writing long posts about how proud they were. I scrolled through the pictures in my dorm room, biting my lip until it bled. By my senior year, I had learned to stop expecting anything. I built my own small circle of support, friends who became like siblings, coworkers who cheered me on. Still, every once in a while, I caught myself staring at families in restaurants, fathers laughing with their daughters, mothers brushing crumbs off their kids' shoulders, and the ache in my chest reminded me that no amount of success could fully erase the sting of being unwanted. After graduation, I moved back closer to Colorado, settling in Denver for work. My first apartment was tiny, barely big enough for a bed and a small table. But it was mine. No one could tell me I didn't belong there. No one could cut me off because I had built it on my own. The silence with my parents stretched on year after year. Sometimes I imagined showing up at their doorstep, demanding to know why Harius deserved their love unconditionally, while I had to fight for scraps. But I never went. Pride held me back. If they wanted me gone, I would stay gone. One day, though, silence turned into betrayal again. Harius had managed to get into real estate. Through my parents' connections, of course. But he wasn't good at it. I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Nat? The voice was unmistakable. My brothers, I froze. How did you get this number? Mom gave it to me. Listen, I've got a deal I'm working on. Big money. I could use your help. You're good with numbers, right? I laughed bitterly. You cut me off for years, and now you're calling me for free consulting. It's family, Nat, he said, like that word had never been used as a weapon against me. We're supposed to help each other. Where was that when I was working 3 jobs just to eat? I snapped. The line went silent for a moment, then he muttered, "Forget it," and hung up. I sat there with the phone in my hand, shaking. Part of me had wanted to hear some apology, some acknowledgement of what they had done. Instead, all I got was proof that I was useful only when they needed something. That call hardened my resolve even more. I poured myself into work. By 25, I had paid off half my loans. By 27, I had my CPA license. By 28, I was managing accounts for startups that trusted me with millions. The same girl they had dismissed as too dramatic was now the woman business owners came to for guidance. But every time I walked into a boardroom in a tailored suit, every time a client shook my hand with respect, I carried the memory of those silent years, the years of empty holidays, unanswered calls, and slammed doors. They thought they had buried me. What they didn't know was that I was a seed, and now I was growing in a way they could no longer ignore. When I agreed to meet them, it wasn't because I wanted reconciliation. It was because I wanted to see their faces when they realized I had survived without them. And more than survived, thrived. The restaurant my mother suggested was exactly what I expected. Upscale, polished. The kind of place with chandeliers that dripped light like diamonds, and waiters who glided instead of walked. It wasn't lost on me that she chose a stage, not a neutral ground. I arrived 5 minutes late on purpose. I wanted them waiting, restless, perhaps even wondering if I would come at all. As I stepped inside, heads turned, not toward me, but simply because that's what people do when the door opens. Yet I held myself taller, letting the click of my heels announce me. There they were, my mother, perfectly coiffed, pearls resting against her collarbone. My father, stern as ever, though time had etched deeper lines across his face. And Harius, older now, but still carrying that aura of golden boy confidence. "Hello," I said simply, sliding into the chair across from them. My mother's smile trembled at the edges. "Natalie, you look... Well, I repeated, letting the word hang. "I am." The silence stretched until my father cleared his throat. "It's been a long time." "Almost 10 years, I said, sipping from the water glass the waiter had just filled. "But who's counting?" Harius shifted in his seat, his eyes darting between us. "We didn't know if you'd come." "Neither did I admitted. But curiosity won. The menus arrived, but no one opened them. The tension at the table was enough to flavor the air. Finally, my mother leaned forward, her voice low. "We've heard things about you. That you've done well." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? I suppose Sarah talks." My father's jaw tightened. "Your name has started appearing in business circles. People mention Meridian Capital. They mention you." There it was. Not pride, not apology, just acknowledgement, filtered through the lens of reputation. "Interesting," I said, "because I don't remember your names coming up much in mine." Harius frowned. "Natalie, come on. That's not fair." "Fair?" The word burned on my tongue. "You all cut me off, completely. No calls, no visits, no help when I was eating ramen 3 times a day in a studio that barely had heating. And now, suddenly, because I'm in magazines and on panels, you remember I exist?" My mother's face paled. "It wasn't like that." "Yes," I said firmly. "It was exactly like that." The table fell into silence again, the weight of my words pressing against the linen tablecloth and the polished silverware. For once, none of them seemed to know what to say. Finally, Harius broke the tension. "We made mistakes." "I made mistakes. I should have reached out." I looked at him, really looked. For the first time, there was no smugness in his expression, only something that resembled guilt, maybe even shame. But guilt doesn't erase years. Shame doesn't feed a hungry 22-year-old trying to scrape by alone. I don't need apologies, I said, my voice steady. Not anymore. What I needed, you all refused to give me years ago. Support, family, a place to belong. I built my own instead. The waiter returned to take our orders. My parents rattled off dishes, their voices brittle. I ordered salmon, though I doubted I would taste much of it. As the evening unfolded, they tried small talk. My mother asked about my apartment. My father inquired about my line of work, as if he hadn't already Googled me. Harrius mentioned his kids, showing me photos on his phone, little faces I'd never met. Nieces and nephews who were strangers. It was surreal. This polite catching up, as though we hadn't been estranged for nearly a decade. Halfway through the meal, my father finally said what I'd been waiting for. We'd like to see you more. Reconnect. I set my fork down slowly. Why now? He stiffened. Because you're family. No, I said softly but firmly. Family doesn't disappear when things get inconvenient. Family doesn't cut off their daughter and sister for not fitting into their mold. You want to reconnect because I have something now. Status, success, maybe even influence. That's not family. That's opportunism. My mother's eyes glistened. Whether from real regret or discomfort at being called out in public, I couldn't tell. Natalie, she whispered, please. For a moment, the little girl inside me, who once begged for approval, wanted to melt. To forgive, to pretend it could all be healed with one dinner. But the woman I had become knew better. I'll think about it, I said finally. But understand this. If I let you into my life again, it will be on my terms. My boundaries, my rules, not yours. They nodded, too quickly, eager for any sliver of possibility. When the check came, my father instinctively reached for it. But I placed my card down first. I've got it, I said. His eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite name. Pride, humiliation, resentment, maybe all three. As I signed the receipt, I realized the truth. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about control. They had stripped it from me once, but now, it was firmly in my hands. When we finally stood to leave, my mother leaned in to hug me. I let her, though my arms stayed stiff at my sides. My father shook my hand, formal and cold. Harrius lingered, his voice low as he said, I really am sorry, Nat. I looked at him, at the brother who once sneered at my failures. We'll see, I replied. As I walked out into the crisp night air, the city lights reflected in the restaurant's glass doors behind me. For years, they had left me in the dark. Now, the glow was mine. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of them seeing it. The night after dinner with my family, I lay awake in my loft apartment, staring at the ceiling. The city hummed outside my windows, sirens in the distance, the steady rhythm of traffic, laughter from people spilling out of a late-night bar. Normally, those sounds comforted me, reminders that I was never alone in this vast, breathing city. But that night, they only underscored the silence in my heart. Seeing them had stirred something I thought I buried years ago. Memories seeped in, uninvited, like the time I was 15, nervously showing my mother a story I had written for English class. She had scanned it quickly, then tossed it aside. You'll never make a living writing silly little stories, Natalie. Focus on something useful, like accounting. Or the time I had saved money from babysitting to buy a used dress for prom. Harrius had spotted me leaving my room that night, and with a smirk said, Guess you'll blend in with the curtains. Nat. I had smiled on the outside, but inside I wanted to disappear, and my father, always silent. Always watching but never defending me. His silence cut deeper than any insult. I turned on my side, clutching the pillow tighter. They had carved wounds into me long before they cut me off completely. And now, after all this time, one dinner had cracked the scabs wide open again. The next morning, I dragged myself into the office early, hoping work would distract me. Meridian Capital was buzzing as usual, phones ringing, assistants hustling between glass-walled conference rooms, the scent of expensive coffee lingering in the air. My office overlooked the skyline, and normally I loved watching the sunrise paint the buildings gold. Today, it felt hollow. Late night? My assistant Kara popped her head in, I forced a smile. Something like that. Just family drama, Kara's brows furrowed. You've never mentioned family before. There's not much to mention, I said quickly, returning my gaze to the spreadsheets on my desk. But the truth clung to me like smoke. I didn't talk about them because talking meant remembering, and remembering hurt. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from Harriet. Thanks again for coming last night. I meant what I said. Can we meet for coffee? Just us. I stared at the text for a long moment. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend it never came. But another part, the part still hungry for answers, replied with a cautious, maybe, I'll think about it. By mid-afternoon, I was knee-deep in a client pitch when Kara knocked again, holding a folder. Natalie, you'll want to see this. Inside were newspaper clippings. My parents' business, Caldwell Interiors, was struggling. Sales down, employees laid off, suppliers pulling out. It wasn't gossip. It was fact, plastered across the business section. I leaned back in my chair, my throat tight, so that's why they wanted me back in their lives. Not just pride, not just curiosity. They needed me. Anger flared hot and sharp. After everything, they still saw me as a tool. That night, I called Harriet. He answered quickly, almost too eagerly. Nat? It's Natalie, I corrected. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the Riverside Cafe. When I arrived, he was already there, fiddling with his coffee cup. He looked tired, the confident sheen gone from his face. Thanks for coming, he said. Why don't you tell me the real reason you all reached out? I asked, sliding into the chair opposite him. His jaw worked, but he didn't deny it. You saw the articles. I did, he sighed. The company's in trouble. Dad made risky investments. Mom overspent on expansions. It's bad, Nat. They're desperate. I stared at him, disbelief mingling with fury. So this wasn't about family. It was about money. As usual. No, Harriet said quickly. It's not just that. I know we treated you badly, worse than badly, but maybe this is our chance to, I don't know, fix things? By asking me to bail you out? I asked bitterly. His silence was answer enough. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Do you remember the night you laughed at me for wearing that thrift store prom dress? Or the years of mocking me for not being enough? Do you remember leaving me to fend for myself when Mom and Dad cut me off? Because I do, every single day. Harriet's eyes dropped to the table. I remember, he whispered. Then you know, I said coldly. You know I don't owe you, or them, anything. He nodded slowly, but then looked up, his eyes glistening. You're right. You don't, but Natalie, we're drowning, and you're the only one who can throw a rope. For a moment, I saw not my arrogant brother, but a man cornered by his own family's mistakes. The bitterness inside me warred with something softer, something I hated to admit. Compassion. But compassion didn't erase betrayal. I stood, gathering my purse. If Mom and Dad want to talk business, they can contact my lawyer. This conversation is over. As I walked out, I heard his voice behind me. I really am sorry. But sorry doesn't fix years of scars. Back in my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and stared out at the glittering skyline. They needed me now, but not as a daughter, not as a sister. Just as a lifeline. And I had to decide if I would let them drown, or if I would pull them up, only to risk being dragged down with them. That choice haunted me as the city lights blurred into the night. I never thought the day would come when I'd be face to face with my family again. Not like this, not after everything. Yet there I was, standing in the polished marble lobby of the Grand Hotel where the annual business summit was being held, my company's banner draped proudly above the registration desk. My name, Natalie, in bold print under the words keynote speaker. The same family who had cut me off years ago for being unworthy was about to walk into my world, the one I had built without them. My palms were sweaty, my heart racing, but there was a steady fire in my chest. Natalie, they just checked in, my assistant whispered, eyes darting toward the revolving glass doors. I turned. And there they were, my parents, Margaret and Richard, and my younger brother, Harris, dressed in expensive suits, carrying themselves with the same arrogance I remembered. They hadn't changed much. My mother's sharp gaze scanned the lobby until it landed on me, and in that instant, the confident mask on her face faltered. "Natalie?" she said softly, as if she couldn't believe her own eyes. "Yes," I replied, my voice calm but edged with steel. "It's me. The daughter you disowned." The color drained from her face. My father's jaw clenched, his pride not allowing him to flinch, but his eyes betrayed recognition and unease. Harris smirked, though his bravado seemed forced. "Well," my father said finally, his voice booming to cover the tension, "it looks like you've done something with yourself." "Something?" I let out a dry laugh. "That's one way to put it." I gestured toward the large display of the event's program, my name at the top. "I'm not just attending, Father. I'm headlining this conference. Hundreds of business leaders from around the world are here to hear me speak." Harris scoffed. "A motivational speaker? That's what you've become? Talking to desperate people who pay for inspiration?" My blood boiled, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. "Funny," I said evenly. "I never needed to step on others to prove my worth." "Unlike you, Harris," his smirk faded. My mother tried to intervene. "Natalie, we didn't know." I cut her off. "Of course you didn't, because you never cared to ask. The last time we spoke, you made it very clear. I was a disappointment, an embarrassment. You said I'd never amount to anything without this family's support. And yet," I spread my arms, gesturing around the lavish hotel lobby filled with attendees wearing badges with my company's logo. "Here we are." A silence hung heavy between us. People nearby had begun to notice, whispers spreading through the lobby as they realized the confrontation unfolding in front of them. My father's voice hardened. "We did what we thought was best. You were reckless, Natalie. You refused to follow the path laid out for you. We couldn't risk the family's reputation." "Reputation?" I repeated, my voice rising with emotion. "Do you even hear yourself? You threw away your own daughter like I was disposable, because I dared to dream differently. I built a life from nothing, while you tried to bury me under shame." My mother's eyes filled with tears. We didn't know you'd succeed like this." That sentence struck me harder than I expected. "We didn't know you'd succeed. So if I had failed, their cruelty would have been justified." My stomach twisted. "You shouldn't have needed to know," I said, my voice trembling now but steadying as I went on. "Love isn't supposed to be conditional. You don't get to treat me like garbage and then come crawling back when I prove you wrong." Harris stepped closer, his voice sharp. "So what now? You think you're better than us?" I squared my shoulders. "No, I don't think I'm better. I know I'm stronger, because I did this without you, and I don't need your validation anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's pride cracked for just a moment, his voice quieter now. "Natalie, maybe we made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I shook my head slowly. "A mistake is forgetting a birthday card. What you did was abandon your daughter. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Their faces, once so smug, so certain, were pale and frozen now. For the first time in years, I saw them not as giants looming over me, but as people. Flawed, weak, afraid. Before they could respond, the event coordinator approached me. "Ms. Collins, we're ready for you backstage." I nodded and turned back to my family. "Excuse me, I have a stage to walk onto, people to inspire, a life to live without you." I walked away, my heels clicking against the marble floor, the sound sharp and final. I didn't look back, but I could feel their eyes on me, stunned and powerless. Backstage, my assistant handed me a microphone, her eyes wide. That was intense. "Are you okay?" I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the confrontation sink in. "For the first time in my life," I said quietly, "I am more than okay." And as the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, calling my name, I stepped onto the stage, not just to give a speech, but to show the world and my family exactly who I had become. The bright stage lights were blinding at first, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw the sea of faces staring back at me. Hundreds of people sat in the vast ballroom, executives, entrepreneurs, young professionals, all waiting for me. Me, Natalie, the woman my family had once labeled as the failure. The announcer's voice faded, replaced by the thunderous applause that rolled across the room. My pulse quickened, but I took a steadying breath. This wasn't just another talk. This was my moment, the culmination of years of struggle, sacrifice, and resilience. "Good evening," I began, my voice echoing across the hall. "When I was younger, I was told I wouldn't make it, that I wasn't good enough, that without the right name, the right family, the right connections, I'd never succeed." I paused, letting the words sink in. My heart thudded in my chest, but my voice grew steadier with each sentence. Maybe some of you have been told the same thing, that you're not enough, that your dreams are too big, that you should give up before you even start. Tonight, I want to tell you that those voices are wrong. The audience leaned in, eyes fixed on me. I could feel the energy shifting, people connecting, not just to the story, but to the raw truth behind it. I told them about the nights I slept in my car after being cut off, the part-time jobs that barely kept me afloat, the rejections that nearly broke me. But each no, each setback, I said, was fuel. Because I realized something powerful. My worth wasn't determined by those who doubted me. It was determined by what I chose to build for myself. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. I glanced toward the back of the ballroom and my chest tightened. There they were, my family. They had slipped in quietly, standing in the shadows near the exit doors, watching me command a stage they never thought I'd stand on. I locked eyes with my mother for a fleeting second. Her expression was unreadable, a mix of shock and something almost like regret. My father stood rigid, his arms crossed tightly, while Harris's smirk was gone, replaced by something closer to disbelief. But I didn't falter. Not this time. Success, I continued, isn't about wealth or power or proving others wrong. It's about reclaiming your voice when others try to silence it. It's about standing tall when the people you expected to hold you up are the very ones pushing you down. The applause that followed was deafening. Some people even stood, clapping, nodding, cheering. My throat tightened with emotion. I wasn't just telling my story. I was telling theirs too. When I finished, the entire room rose to its feet, the standing ovation echoing through the ballroom like a tidal wave. I bowed my head slightly, fighting the tears threatening to spill over. As I left the stage, my assistant rushed to hug me. "Natalie, you killed it!" The whole room was hanging on every word. But my focus shifted to the lobby doors where my family lingered, hesitant, almost small against the backdrop of my triumph. For once, they weren't the center of attention. They weren't the powerful figures looming over me. They were just spectators, forced to watch me shine. I walked toward them, still flushed from the energy of the stage. My father spoke first, his voice low but urgent. "Natalie, that was impressive." "Impressive?" I repeated, my tone sharp. "I didn't do it to impress you. I did it because people like me, people you abandoned, needed to hear it." My mother's lips trembled. "We didn't realize how much you'd been through," I laughed bitterly. "Of course you didn't. You never cared enough to ask. You cut me off and you expected me to disappear. Instead, I built a life you can't ignore." Harris stepped forward. "So what now? You punish us forever? Pretend we don't exist?" I met his eyes, unflinching. "I don't need to punish you. Your own actions have already done that. Look at you. You can't stand the fact that I succeeded without you. That's your punishment." Their silence was answer enough. I turned away, leaving them in the lobby as guests and journalists began swarming me for interviews and photos. Flashbulbs popped. Microphones were thrust in my face, and all I could think was how surreal it felt. Years ago, I was invisible. Tonight, I was undeniable. Later, back in my hotel suite, I finally let the tears come. Not out of sadness, but out of release. The years of pain, of silence, of longing for their approval. It was all behind me now. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what my family thought of me. Because I finally knew who I was, and that was enough. The morning after my speech, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. My inbox was flooded. Partnership offers, invitations to podcasts, requests for interviews. People I'd never met were calling my story inspiring, powerful, life-changing. For once, the weight of the past didn't press down on me. Instead, I felt light, as though the applause from the night before still echoed in my chest. But it didn't take long for the shadows of my past to creep back in. A knock on my hotel room door startled me. My assistant poked her head in, looking uneasy. "Natalie, your family's here," I froze. "Here? Now?" She nodded. "They're in the lobby. They said they want to talk." I almost laughed. For years, they ignored me, mocked me, cut me out. And now, after watching me succeed in front of the world, they wanted to talk? The timing wasn't lost on me. Still, part of me, the wounded daughter who once begged for their approval, hesitated. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Minutes later, I was seated across from them in a private lounge. My father spoke first, his tone rehearsed and calm. "Natalie," he began, "last night showed us something we hadn't realized before. We underestimated you. We shouldn't have." I raised an eyebrow. "That's your way of apologizing?" He cleared his throat. "It's a start. Look, your success, it reflects on the family too. We should be united, present ourselves as one. Think of the opportunities if we work together." My chest tightened, not with longing but with anger. "Work together? After you cut me off and called me a failure?" My mother leaned in, her eyes glistening. "We only wanted to push you to be strong. To see you now, it means our methods worked." I almost choked on the absurdity. "Don't twist this. I made it in spite of you, not because of you." Harris, ever the opportunist, leaned back casually. "Fine, but now you have influence, power, money. Don't you think it's smart to bring your family back into the picture? People will question why you're so distant from us otherwise." There it was, the truth, plain and ugly. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted access. They wanted the spotlight that wasn't theirs to claim. I kept my voice steady. "You didn't come here for me. You came here for yourselves." My father's expression hardened. "Natalie, don't be dramatic. We are offering you a chance to repair what's broken." I stood, refusing to let my voice shake. "The only thing broken is the illusion that you care about me. You didn't cheer for me when I was nothing. You don't get to stand next to me now that I'm something." My mother's voice cracked, a trace of genuine desperation slipping through. "Natalie, please. We're still your family." I looked at her. The same woman who once told me I'd never survive without them. The same woman who laughed when I packed my things and left. And for the first time, I saw her not as a towering figure, but as a small, fearful person realizing she had lost her grip on me. "I have a family," I said softly, my throat tight. "It just doesn't include you anymore." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. My father's jaw clenched. Harris muttered a curse under his breath. My mother covered her face with her hands, but I didn't waver. I turned and walked away, my heels clicking against the polished floor like a drumbeat of finality. Back in my suite, I collapsed into a chair, my hands trembling. I knew this wasn't the end. They wouldn't give up easily. But I also knew something more important. They no longer had power over me. That night, as I reviewed the flood of new opportunities, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my father. "Natalie, think carefully. Don't destroy the family name over pride." I stared at the words, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Pride? No, this wasn't pride. This was survival. And for once, I wasn't afraid to choose myself. The days after my confrontation with my family blurred into a whirlwind of attention. Journalists wanted sound bites. Entrepreneurs sought partnerships. Strangers sent messages saying my speech gave them courage to walk away from their own toxic families. But behind the bright lights, the shadows deepened. My family wasn't retreating quietly. It began with subtle jabs online, anonymous comments questioning my credibility, suggesting I exaggerated my struggles. Then, whispers surfaced that I had fabricated parts of my journey, and though no one said it outright, I knew exactly where those rumors came from. My father, Harris, my mother. They couldn't stand watching me succeed without them, so they tried to smear me instead. One evening, I sat with my closest friend Maya in my apartment. She had been by my side through it all. Her presence was steady, grounding. "They're trying to drag me down," I admitted, showing her the articles popping up online. "And the worst part is, they know exactly where to hit. They know my weaknesses." Maya placed her hand over mine. "Natalie, listen to me. They don't define your story anymore. You do. You have receipts, Proof. And more importantly, you have thousands of people who believe in you because they see your truth. I nodded, but inside, a storm raged. I knew a bigger confrontation was inevitable. It came sooner than expected. I received an invitation, though calling it that felt generous, to a family dinner. The message from my father was blunt. You owe us this, tonight, 7 p.m., our house. For years, their house had felt like a battlefield. Walking back into it felt like returning to enemy territory, but something inside me told me this was the moment everything would come to a head. When I arrived, the atmosphere was already thick with tension. My father sat at the head of the long mahogany table, Harris lounging at his side, smug as ever. My mother fussed with the silverware, avoiding eye contact. Natalie, my father said flatly as I took my seat, we need to end this nonsense. Public spats damage reputations, yours and ours. So here's what's going to happen. You'll issue a statement clarifying that your speech was exaggerated for dramatic effect. You'll credit this family for your foundation, and in return we'll stand beside you publicly. Everyone wins. The audacity made my skin crawl. So you want me to erase my truth and give you credit for everything I built on my own? Harris smirked. It's not erasing. It's framing. Image management. Something you've always been bad at. I clenched my fists beneath the table, the wood pressing sharply into my knuckles. My chest burned with a cocktail of anger and disbelief. Do you even hear yourselves? My voice wavered, though not from weakness. No. This was rage that had been fermenting for years. You cut me off. You told me I was nothing, and now you expect me to rewrite history so you can bask in my success. The silence that followed was suffocating, as if the very walls of the dining room held their breath. Finally, my mother spoke. Her voice trembled like glass about to shatter. Natalie, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. Families fight, but at the end of the day, we need each other. I turned to her slowly, meeting her eyes. My heart ached despite everything she had done. Despite all the nights I had cried alone because of her absence. I needed you when I was drowning, Mom. Where were you then? Her lips parted, but no words came. She flinched as though I had struck her, tears brimming in her eyes. Still, she said nothing. The sharp crack of my father's palm slamming against the table made me jump. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. His face was red, his jaw tight with fury. Enough, he barked, his voice reverberating with the authority I had once cowered under. You will not throw away everything we built. You carry this family's name, and you will honor it, or I'll make sure you regret it. His threat cut through the air, heavy and suffocating. Once, those words would have crushed me, sending me spiraling back into silence, but not tonight. Something inside me snapped, not with despair, but with liberation. Years of fear, doubt, and desperate hunger for their approval crumbled under the weight of his ultimatum. I stood. My knees shook, but my voice was steady, almost startlingly so. You don't get to control me anymore. Not my choices, not my future, not my truth. You lost that power the day you turned your backs on me. Across the table, Harris smirked, that smug expression I knew too well. You'll regret this, Natalie. The world is fickle. Fame fades. When it does, you'll come crawling back. I leaned forward, my gaze locking with his. For the first time, I wasn't intimidated. For the first time, the fire in me burned hotter than his contempt. The difference between us, Harris, is that I don't need fame to feel whole. I built myself from nothing. I can do it again if I have to. Can you say the same? His smirk faltered. Just a flicker, but enough to tell me I had struck a nerve. I reached for my bag, my decision already made. This is the last time I let you into my life on your terms. From now on, if you want to be part of it, it will be on mine. And if that's not acceptable, then this is goodbye. The room fell into stunned silence. My father's face was crimson, veins pulsing at his temple. My mother's shoulders shook with quiet sobs. Harris stared as if he didn't recognize the woman standing before him. And maybe he didn't. Because I was no longer the outcast, begging for scraps of approval. I was the survivor who had endured without them, thrived without them, and now, finally, understood that I didn't need them at all. I walked out of that house without looking back. The night air hit me like a baptism, crisp and cold, wrapping around me like freedom itself. As I drove away, my vision blurred with tears, not of sadness, but of release. The chains they had locked me in for years had finally shattered. For the first time in my life, I was truly, unapologetically free. Months trickled by after that confrontation. At first, I braced myself for retaliation. Rumors planted in tabloids, whispered slander at industry events, carefully orchestrated attempts to tarnish what I had built. But none came. Instead, there was silence. Maybe they realized their words no longer had teeth, or maybe for the first time they saw me as untouchable. Either way, the quiet was a gift. In that quiet, I began to rebuild my life, not in pursuit of recognition, but in pursuit of meaning. My foundation grew faster than I could have dreamed. Survivors from all walks of life found me. People who had been discarded, humiliated, or cut off by those who should have loved them most. They shared their stories, voices cracking under the weight of wounds that mirrored mine. Each time I listened, really listened, because I knew that pain. It lived in me once, raw and suffocating. And now, offering them a hand, a voice, a platform, gave me purpose deeper than any trophy or headline ever could. For the first time, I wasn't chasing validation. I was giving others what I had craved all my life: understanding, encouragement, hope. One crisp autumn morning, I found myself standing at a podium in a packed auditorium. The foundation had organized its first national conference. The air buzzed with energy and anticipation, a sea of faces stretching before me. These were not strangers. They were warriors. People who had survived betrayal, rejection, abuse. People who had clawed their way out of the dark. I took a steadying breath, my palms pressed lightly to the wooden podium. I used to think being cut off by my family was the worst thing that could ever happen to me, I began, my voice carrying through the hushed room. I thought it meant I was unlovable, disposable. But what I've learned is this: being cut off didn't destroy me. It freed me. It gave me the chance to discover who I really am, and to build a life on my own terms. The applause rose like thunder, rolling through the auditorium. Yet what mattered more were the tear-streaked faces, the nods of recognition, the hands clasped tightly together in silent solidarity. They understood. When the event ended and the crowd slowly dispersed, I noticed a figure lingering at the back of the room. My heart stumbled when I recognized her. My mother. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, not the polished, poised woman who had once towered over my life. Her shoulders slumped, her eyes weary. She clutched her purse like it was the only thing anchoring her in place. "Natalie," she whispered when she reached me. Her voice cracked like dry leaves underfoot. I saw you on the news. I wanted to see for myself." Her eyes brimmed with tears, and for the first time, there was no judgment in them, only exhaustion. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quickly, as if bracing for rejection. "But I want you to know I was wrong. I let your father and brother decide how I treated you, and I'm sorry. Truly." The words I had ached to hear for years hung in the air, fragile and trembling. But instead of rushing into her arms, I felt something different, a calm clarity I had never known. "I appreciate you saying that," I said softly. "But healing isn't about words, it's about actions. If you want to be part of my life, it will have to look very different." Tears slid down her cheeks as she nodded. "I'll try." I didn't know if we would ever rebuild what had been broken. But for once, the choice was mine. The balance of power had shifted. I was no longer the desperate, abandoned girl. I was a woman who knew her worth. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I sat by the window, the city lights sprawling endlessly beneath me. The hum of traffic was steady, almost comforting. I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who begged for scraps of approval, who cried herself to sleep after being cut off, who believed her life was over because her family turned their backs on her. If I could reach through time and speak to her now, I would whisper, "You are more than their rejection. You are strong, you are enough, and one day, you will build a life so beautiful it will make them regret ever doubting you." A smile curved across my lips as I closed my eyes. I had come full circle, not with vengeance, but with peace. Because true success wasn't about proving my family wrong. It was about proving to myself that I had always been right. That I was worthy, capable, and deserving of love. And this time, I didn't just hope it. I believed it. And if my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they too deserve respect and unconditional love. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living free, living joyful, living unapologetically as yourself.